Welcome to the positive side. I'm your host, Roy Garibaldi, and you know it, I'm always going to bring you a little bit of life, sports, and yes, entertainment. But in this one, I got to tell you, this guy went to stardom with some other kids that happened so fast, you would have thought it would have blown his head up and money would have went right down the drain. But instead, he found a way to keep himself intact in order to come back and keep it rolling even 20 years later. How do you remember and how do you, Donnie, pay so close attention to people that really made you who you are today?
Well, you kind of have to, you know. I don't know how. I think it's partially just where I'm from and where we're from, you know. We're street kids in Boston, you know, we pay attention to people, because you have to. You know, you can't just walk in a room with people and be oblivious to what's going on. You gotta remember them. Because, you know, one of them could take your life, or one of them may know your brother or your cousin.
Right.
You know, if you brush them off or whatever, they you know, you'll hear about it. Well, I come from a big family. I mean, I can't go to Boston and not be kind to everybody there, because someone will let me know, hey, my brother's cousin's uncle said you brushed them off at the restaurant there. What's your problem? You know, so it's a little bit of that, but it's also, you know, we always took it, you know, took any success we had, and I certainly did, you know, with the realistic, you know, sense that, you know, as easy as it comes, it can go.
When I first met you over 20 years ago when Mr. Scott took me backstage and introduced me to you, the first thing that I remember was things happened to you in a hurry, and it almost seemed as if the media was overwhelmed the fact that you guys became overnight successes.
Everybody's always talking about who's on top. Don't cross our path, 'cause you're gonna get stopped.
But in your mind, you're like, whoa, man, it hasn't been that easy, and I'm not going to take advantage of this. And that's the one thing I remember about you was, dude, man, I appreciate what I have today.
Yeah. Well, you know, nothing is really overnight. You know, maybe nowadays with YouTube, you can throw something out there and ba-boom, it happens overnight.
Can you imagine if they had YouTube when you guys first came out? Seriously.
It probably, you know, we might have lasted about 8 seconds instead of 15 minutes, you know, the famed 15 minutes. But, you know, we worked really hard. I mean, at the time of our success, I think, you know, the average age of us was 18, and I'd been doing it for, you know, 5 years, or 4.5 years. So 4.5 years out of 18, I mean, that's, you know, that's a good chunk of my life. And that's just in the group.
Sure.
I mean, I spent years before that dancing and doing, you know, performing on street corners and stuff like that. So it's not, you know, I mean, half of my life was spent in some way performing. And, you know, I suppose it happened relatively quick regardless, because once it started, it was huge. But, you know, it all is what it is, you know. The media, there's sort of a cycle, you know, somebody becomes hot and they become the hot story, and eventually, you know, people want to sort of take them down. And then if you survive the takedown, you could be a comeback story one day. You know, that's just the way of the world, man, for everyone. And, you know, it's not personal, it's just the world.
Donnie, when you think about the magnitude of money that you made so quick, and then when everything kind of came to a halt, you're like, okay, now let's see. Am I going to be an actor? Am I going to do this? Well, where am I? I mean, you already had that thought process going. And I'll never forget something you said to me one night in a hotel. Is my little brother bugging you? And you said, man, don't pay that little punk any attention. And I'll never forget you saying that. But at the same time, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, if I work with Marky long enough, there's something there. Mm-hmm. But you had your own pace. So you were already an entrepreneur, businessman, long before anybody knew really who you were outside of New Kids on the Block. Is that a fair statement?
It's fair. I mean, I guess I was sort of an entrepreneur in New Kids on the Block too, but I can tell you that I had other goals and other dreams, and I think Mark, you know, launching Mark's career was sort of one of those goals, you know, to produce records and to sort of do my own thing.
It's about that time to bring forth the rhythm and the rhyme. I'ma get mine, so get yours. I wanna see sweat coming
same time, when you're that successful and it slows down, like that picture right there, that magic summer in a football stadium.
Let me say something. 50,000 people, Donnie.
Yeah.
50,000 people there.
When you go from 50,000 like this to, 500 in a nightclub, in a few years' time, it's not so much the numbers, because nobody ever really feels worthy of 50,000 people in a football stadium. How can anyone ever feel worthy of that? It's very humbling. But at the same time, when it slows down, it is scary. It is scary, and it's sort of like, I don't know. There's really nothing to compare it to. I sort of can compare what it felt like to being like the star player on a college basketball team. You're playing in front of, thousands of people every night. You're the center of attention. You're one of 5 guys who's, every girl on campus wants to be with you. And but when those guys finish their college career, they go on to the pros. We were already the pros. So when our 4-year window started to end and we're 22 years old, the age of a college graduate, it was our career in most people's minds was over. So it's like, where do you go from there? So it's definitely scary. It's daunting, and the money doesn't mean anything, because when you're 22 and you've ridden the roller coaster and you get to the end, it's like, now what? And some people look at now what with tremendous fear, and some people look at it with joy and excitement. And it took me a while to be excited, even though I had an entrepreneurial spirit and I was producing records and doing other things. I was really frightened for a minute, because it's almost like an inmate getting out of prison. Sure. I couldn't turn on a light switch for myself for 4 years, and now, I was free. I had money, but I didn't know how to book a plane ticket for myself. So it takes a second to reacclimate to being normal, and if you do it successfully, then it's a blessing.
Who would have thought? New Kids on the Block. 20 years later, even Donnie Wahlberg is surprised when he sees what stardom did for him at a young age. But wait until we come back. I'm going to flash back 20 years with him when I was on tour with him as a photographer when we went to South America. This segment has been brought to you by Ganem Jewelers, featuring Knight Rider, Pachoni Collision, and Custom Paint. Pachoni's certified and trained technicians use the latest techniques and procedures to ensure your vehicle is safe and repaired to the highest OEM standards. Pachoni works with all insurance companies. Pachoni works for you, not your insurance company. Pachoni Collision and Custom Paint is located in Phoenix at 16666 North 32nd Street, just 100 yards south of Bell on 32nd Street.
What do you say to a spin around the color wheel? To paint with primer already mixed in. Test samples instead of canned commitments. What do you say we dip into our wallets less and grab a hold of the latest tools out there so we can quit all that messing around with extra steps and get busy turning our doing dials up a notch? More saving, more doing. That's the power of the Home Depot.
If you're in a wreck, you wouldn't settle for getting half your car fixed. So why would you settle for getting half the lawyer to get you half the money you deserve?
In a wreck, need a check, we're Lerner and Rowe. One call, that's all.
Call 977-1900.
Welcome back to The Positive Side. Before we went to break, I was sharing with you about going to South America with New Kids on the Block. For me at a young age, 20 years ago, what a thrill it was for me to be able to go to Chile, Santiago, participate in Amnesty Internationals with some of the biggest names like Sting, Peter Gabriel, Jackson Brown, Sinead O'Connor, but 90,000 plus girls to see New Kids on the Block? You want to talk about a rush? That's exactly what it was. It's funny when you look back at this stuff, all the changes you went through, but one of the things that I find ironic is even through all the different stages that you went through here is really ironic that you always played to the crowd. Mm-hmm. It was never about you when you got up there. Right. You really cared about the people that paid to come see you. Yeah. And that's why they're coming back 20 years later, and it's amazing. I've been walking around and I cannot believe the moms and their daughters. It's unbelievable. The daughters are wearing pins like this, and I'm thinking, is this unbelievable? I mean, look, it's a chill. You don't see that, Donnie.
No, I see it, but I do see it. I do see it because I look. You know, that's, I mean, what you said about the way I performed in the old days, I really tried to touch as many people as I could in the crowd, you know, if not physically, literally with my hand, I would, you know, try to connect with them with my eyes. And I still do it. I have to control myself some nights because there are certain numbers where discipline is required and it's not really meant for me to be waving and carrying on with fans. But it's, these people now more than ever, you know, are paying money. And it's not their mom's money anymore. It's not their dad's money. They're not little kids. It's their money. They've grown up and have jobs and kids and houses and responsibilities and mortgages. And they're paying their money to come see us. You know, the least we can do is connect with them. You know, is to give them something that makes them feel like, you know, at worst, I had a great time at the concert. Sure. But at best, oh my God, Donnie looked right at me and waved and smiled, you know.
All right, Donnie, I want to take you back something. I remember this like it was yesterday. The pilot comes on the plane and says, we have a situation at the airport in Chile, Santiago. There's over 20,000 girls and they're forcing the fence and we think they're going to stampede the runway. So we're going to have to stop out on the runway and this could be a very dangerous situation. And I'll never forget you go, sweet baby, you went crazy. You're like, wow. And here they were worried about safety and you're going, this is so cool. Think about that, 20,000. And then when we got on the bus, they were crawling on top like you guys were the Beatles.
Yep, they were on the roof.
Do you remember what a thrill that was?
I remember that trip, that experience, that whole, the whole thing, because we were going down there to play a concert for Amnesty International. In Santiago, Chile, which, you know, had just been liberated from Pinochet. But it was like, for us to be asked to go there was so incredible. And Jack Healy asked us to come down, and it was, you know, Sting and Sinead O'Connor and Ruben Blades and Jackson Brown and Peter Gabriel. And it was like, what are we doing here? Yeah. You know, and on the one hand, we were on a mission to go there and do some good, and with these serious, well-respected artists, we wanted to show them, you know, who we were and that we were real people, and that we were human, and we wanted to perform it and do something great and bring joy to people who hadn't had a chance to have a lot of joy for a long time. But I think knowing that all those fans were there was a relief to us. You know, it was like, okay, this is, you know, we know we're coming down here to perform with heavyweights, but our fans are here too, and we're gonna show these heavyweights what we can do.
You know, it's funny when you say that. I'll never forget the comment by Sinead O'Connor. She nonchalantly said, "Who are these kids?"
Right.
Because she couldn't believe the rush that was happening from the girls. Yeah. Now, you want to talk about a rush. I'll never forget looking across the stage at your main man, Earl, as I could feel the stage starting to like pressure push it and realizing there's 98,000 girls that are pushing the stage. I mean, you guys were laughing, even though you were performing. Right. Donnie, you guys were laughing. Well, you couldn't believe it.
You know what it was? Because there's something that happens. I mean, obviously, if the people are in danger, we're concerned, but everything was pretty safe. But just to look out at those people, none of whom even spoke English, and they're singing every single word to every one of our songs. And like that, that whole experience, like we did the picture there with Sinead O'Connor, we did the press conference, and
that's right, we were all wearing headsets.
Yeah, we all had the translators and stuff, and it's a worldwide media, and just, you know, I spoke for the group, and at the end of the press conference, you know, Sting came over and hugged me, and he said, you were excellent, you were very eloquent, and you were wonderful. And Sinead O'Connor said the same thing, and it was like, it just meant the world to me, because even though we were very famous and very successful and we were on lunch boxes and cartoons, we really, really started as just street kids, man. You know, we were down-to-earth people who fought for everything we had. We worked hard. I mean, it wasn't like some magical producer just put us, you know, on stage and we became multimillionaires. I mean, we used to play in prisons and birthday parties and violent neighborhoods with gangbangers outside. I mean, we worked our butts off to just make it in Boston, never mind make it for the whole world. And so for us, you know, there was always more to us than people knew on the outside. And so to go there with those artists and to have them sort of acknowledge that and recognize that, it meant a lot to us.
How do you feel inside right now?
I feel a little tired, but really doing everything I want to do. You know, I'm acting on a great TV series, and I love that job. I'm touring in arenas all around the world, And I love this job, and I'm doing it with my guys, you know. These guys are like my brothers, you know. We grew apart for a while, but coming back together, I mean, for me right now at 41, I'm very, very grateful, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
This segment has been brought